Good afternoon, everyone. Ken Phelps here with the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce. Pleased to welcome you to our Zoom into Tallahassee speaker series, Business Regulations and Liability in a COVID-19 Environment, and we are all dealing with that. My pleasure to welcome you this afternoon. We're going to go through some housekeeping items real quick before we get into our program. When you come into the meeting, we ask that you make sure your microphones are muted and that your cameras are turned off. Make sure that our speakers are presented in as large a screen as possible and you're not having to squint at somebody in a very small square on your computer monitor. If you have a question during today's program, we're going to ask you to submit that using the chat function in Zoom. If you move your mouse over your screen, you'll see the menu panel pop up. Click on the chat button, it'll open that. You can go ahead and do that now and you'll be ready to submit some questions. We'll get to as many of those as we can in the program. If you miss something, we are going to record the session and we'll make that available on our Back in Business Safely page and through the Daytona Regional Chamber's YouTube channel. With that, it's my pleasure to get the program started and introduce our President and CEO here at the Daytona Regional Chamber, Nancy Kiefer. Nancy, take it away.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that. And welcome, everybody. I think that today's topic is incredibly interesting, and we thank our esteemed panelists and our moderator for joining us. I think we're going to have a very interesting hour or so of conversation, although via Zoom. Obviously, we don't do programs like this without the support of some great members, and we have three that we'll recognize today. And very quickly, I would like to thank the Daytona Beach News Journal, who is a sponsor of our Eggs and Issues and our Zoom programs like this, and we appreciate their support as a marketing partner. At this time, I would like to recognize Kevin Craig with AT&T, also a trustee member and a great sponsor. Kevin.
Thanks, Nancy. First of all, I want to thank you, Nancy, and Jim, and Ken, and the whole Chamber staff. These are really unusual times we're living in, and it's tough to keep members engaged and connected, and you guys just do a heck of a job keeping everyone engaged, bringing in great speakers like the star-studded lineup we have today on this important issue. So I want to thank our speakers for being here and everyone else for zooming in. And as I've learned from this, I'm going to keep my remarks short before my dog starts barking in the background. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Kevin, thank you. Kevin is also a member of our board of directors, a trustee member, and very, very engaged and involved in our community. So we really appreciate that. I'd also like to recognize Diana Fritz from Coastal Cloud to say a few words.
Thank you, Nancy. Diana Fritz with Coastal Cloud. And again, to echo Kevin's comments, the topic for today, thank you for pulling it together, and thank you for our guest speakers for being here. This is a very important, relevant topic. Coastal Cloud is proud to be a member of the Chamber and a local technology consulting partner. And since March, we have been partnering with multiple customers, businesses from public sector to travel to assist with this back to work safely using technology with COVID. So really appreciate you taking the time today to share this, your information. Thank you.
And thank you, Diana. We appreciate your investment as a trustee member here at the Chamber as well. So we'll quickly get into the program, and it's really my honor to introduce Representative Tom Leek, who represents District 25, having been elected in 2016 and re-elected in 2018. He is a former chairman of the board of directors of our chamber here, and he's been a great advocate for a fair and equitable business environment. In Tallahassee, he chairs the Public Integrity and Ethics Committee and serves on the very important Appropriations Committee, along with many other committee areas. At the request of the Speaker of the House, he also serves on the House leadership team. In the wake of COVID-19 crisis, Representative Leek was asked by Governor Ron DeSantis to serve on the Reopen Florida Task Force to develop a plan for the reopening of the state after the pandemic. He is the Chief Legal Officer for Foundation Risk Partners Corporation. He's very involved throughout his district. It really is my honor to introduce and turn the program over to our Representative Tom Leek.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I love hearing all those accolades about me. I'm really impressed with myself right now. I appreciate it. It's always good to be back in my old stomping grounds of the Chamber. I've got a affection for the Chamber. I've been involved with the Chamber for the better part of more than 20 years, actually. So it's always nice to come back and be involved with the Chamber. Thank you for joining us today for the virtual Tallahassee Speaker Series program. And today is going to be business regulations and liability in a COVID-19 environment. Businesses want to operate with confidence, but with ever-changing rules, many businesses are asking, how do we legally operate? Any new rules forthcoming? We hope to address those issues today. There's also a question of liability, and I see Senator Brandis here, and Senator Brandis and I have worked on a number of these issues together, but there's also questions of liability related to businesses regarding employees and customers as they reopen. This is also a major issue in the current stimulus package negotiations, which of course are out of our hands. Your presenters today are going to be one, Halsey Beshears, the Secretary of the Department of Business and Professional Regulation since January of 2019. Halsey and I served together in the House, and when I found out that Halsey was going to be the Secretary of the DBPR, I thought there's nobody I trust more to make sure that we're not over-regulated than Halsey Beshears, and so what an honor it is to have Halsey here today. We also have Senator Tom Wright. Senator Wright and I served together on the Volusia County Legislative Delegation. He serves on the committees of Military Veterans Affairs and chairs the Space what is that, Tom? The Space Caucus here, Florida Space Caucus for us here, and has served many roles within our community. Like I said, Senator Jeff Brandis, he's a buddy of mine, serves District 24 out of Pinellas County. I really appreciate you being here, Senator Brandis. And Senator Brandis and I have worked on a number of tort liability issues, and we're just honored to have you here, sir. Today, the program logistics are that throughout the discussion with our guest, I will ask those online to type your questions in the chat room, and they will be answered in the order they are received. We're going to start with Secretary Beshears, and we're going to talk about the current status of rules and regulations. Specifically, Secretary, if you could start, if you want to give a brief opening statement, please do so, and then I'm going to ask you to talk about some things that we should expect coming down the pike here.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks for having me here today. It's always good to see you, buddy. Look, DBPR, for those of y'all that don't know, is the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. We regulate every business and professional license out there. Basically, that's not judiciary, legal, or medical for the most part. So anything else that you can think of, that license or business license comes through this agency. We have 17 offices throughout the state, about 1,600 employees. Our budget's $155 million. And what I love about this agency is it moves fast, but we are the gateway for people trying to find a job in the state of Florida. And that's kind of what brought me where I am today. I started working on something called deregulation of some of these professions about 4 years ago. And when the governor was elected, he liked some of the work that we had done. He asked me to do this job. Here we are today now, almost 2 years later, year and a half later. That's kind of brought me to where I am today. And it's been a fantastic journey to this point, trying to help people make themselves better and help their families provide their own way in the state of Florida. And that's something that I'm very proud of. That's really Tom, that's what we do as an overview. That's really all I can say. I'm not a big speaker, you know that. I don't like saying much. And really, I'm here to help you guys and answer questions and, talk about what we can do to help moving forward.
Well, Halsey, I know you've been working a lot on what to do with the bars, and just so everyone knows, bars not only includes Robbie O'Connell's on Seabreeze, it also includes a lot of the veterans organizations as well. You want to give us a little brief on where you stand with the bars and reopening the bars?
Yeah, sure, Tom. So Sunday I got done. I went around and I toured, kind of went around the Horn of Florida, went Duval County, Leon, Escambia, Pinellas, we're kind of combined Pinellas and Hillsborough County, Lee County, Monroe, Brevard, Indian River, Seminole, Orange. Met with bars and brewery owners separate, just finished Sunday, and tried to come up with solutions on how we can move forward, how we can open up. And really, that's it. I learned something at every single solitary meeting. And now, Monday, we started putting a plan together with our team. We kind of have some ideas on how we can move forward as we speak today. And by that, I mean, we kind of have an idea, hey, we can do this now. We're looking at the numbers. What can we do this week? What can we do next week? What can we do 4 weeks from now? And that's really where we are. And while we were out there too, I admitted we've made some mistakes along the way. This isn't a normal environment we're operating in, but I think it's our job here, just like with some of the things we did before, to give entrepreneurs a way to pivot. If we give them some tools and we provide the guidelines on how they can open, then we can come back to this deal and find a way to safely reopen and get these people back to work. It was a hard conversation. They were very emotional. I feel like I've aged 10 years after that, but somebody had to have that conversation, and I'm glad we did it. Now we're going to figure out how to open it up and move forward.
Secretary, what are some of the other issues you've had to address in the department?
Well, I mean, it's sad that COVID-19 is all that anybody and everybody thinks about, but we've done so much good stuff since we've been here that really makes it better for Florida's businesses and professions to operate. Like, first of all, the Occupational Freedom and Opportunity Act, which was called DREG for short originally, we made it easier for some of these professions to operate, period. That's it. There were too many onerous restrictions. There were too many high barriers to entry. We went through it literally job by job by job by license. And we said, hey, how can we decrease this without compromising the safety and integrity of what the profession does and balance that kind of against the Florida citizens out there today? Senator Brandis, who's on here with you, he and I worked on this 4 years ago. We kind of started this. So we finally got it across the goal line. We made it, look, did we do as much as we wanted? Absolutely not. But in my opinion, every little bit that we made it easier, we made it better, and we didn't compromise the safety, we won. Just like barbers, for example, they have fewer hours now to train. Cosmetologists, we lowered the continuing education hours. CPAs, hair wrappers, body wrappers, hair braiders. Those professions may not sound sexy to you, but they provide a job for some people. They provide their own business. We're not talking about 100, 200 licenses. We're talking about cumulatively hundreds of thousands of licenses in the state of Florida. So that was one thing we did. I think another thing that's been lost right now, all professions now, the application's online. You don't have to mail it in. You can literally go online, enter the application, and you can start to get your professional license back that way. Everything was on paper before that. We've converted that in the meantime. We did it in about 8 months. All the licenses are now paperless. That sounds silly, doesn't it? But believe it or not, we were still mailing licenses all over the state. Now you can print and reprint your license, everything today. We've adapted now with testing. Pearson VUE, we just announced a partnership with Pearson VUE, where now these professional tests, you can take them online. That was one thing that we kind of did to adapt during COVID, but we always had that in the process, and it took a while to get there. But imagine now you don't have to go somewhere to take the test. We figured it out. We negotiated. We came up with Pearson. Guess what? Now you can take that test at home. So these are all things that we've done to make this leaner, meaner, and faster, stronger, to give a better service to the state of Florida with that customer service approach, because that's what we need to do. Citizens out there, they don't care if we're having a bad day. They just know, hey, I got to go through this agency to get back to work. What's our job to help you do that? And we help to do that expeditiously.
Hey, Halsey, just out of curiosity, have you found some things that we had to do because of COVID that you think, we can do that now? There's no reason to go back to the way we were.
Well, I think that's a conversation to have in some of these emergency orders in terms of called drinks to go. You can go to your restaurant and buy a drink to go. You can go to your brewery and buy a drink to go. So I think there are certain things that have come out of COVID-19 and this pandemic where it'll behoove all of Florida businesses to perhaps change. And I can see a flurry of legislation coming again to make it easier to operate and give businesses more tools to be profitable at the end of the day. So I think drinks to go is one. I think there's going to be a litany of stuff that comes out of DEO on how to give some tax credits back to these businesses and make it right. Litigation on the other side of that, so litigious society. I'm sure you and Senator Brandis and Senator Wright are going to be front and center on, hey, how do we protect these guys from getting sued for something silly that happened after the pandemic? So.
Well, thank you. What do you see coming next for the department?
That's kind of the $6 million question because of where we are right now with COVID-19. That seems to be the focus, but we have to continue to have a customer service approach. We have to continue to move the ball down the field and make it an easier and more pleasant experience when you're trying to get that professional license. We're going to continue to try and lower barriers to entry to these certain jobs. I can see more deregulation of some professions coming further down the road. I think that, just right now out of COVID-19, barbers want to act mobile now. Cosmetologists want to be mobile. There were some training aspects they always complained about in the beginning, but guess what? Well, now maybe we realize maybe we don't need that stuff. So there'd be a better way for some of these professions to operate. So I can see some things like that changing. I also think that the licensing boards are going to change. I think how Florida does business is going to change. We have 17 boards that we run through rules and regulations for the agency. I can see that changing in how we do business and how those rules are implemented. The day-to-day business is going to change for the state of Florida. So there's going to be a lot of things happening after this thing settles down.
And Secretary, do I remember correctly that when we were going through the dereg wars on the House floor, was it cosmetologists who had to have more hours of training than what our EMTs?
Yeah, a lot of those professions had to have more hours than EMTs. I mean, look, I'm a private pilot. It takes 40 hours to get your license. It took another 40 hours to get my instrument rating. It takes you about 150 hours to be a commercial pilot. EMTs are around 320 hours. For a barber right now, it was 1,600 hours originally. 1,600 hours to be a barber and a cosmetologist. And I'm not taking anything away from that, but the only ones that were winning in that were the schools that were getting paid the money to go to school. So a lot of those things across the board. Nail specialists, those were as many hours. Those were 240 hours to be a nail specialist. We shrunk that to about 180. And again, it's just so many things across the board. It was out of whack. And the training that it required for you to do that. But EMTs, pilots, the sniper for the governor, he brought that up, how many hours of training they had. And I can't tell you that specific number. It was less than 500 though. 5 jumps at jump school, 40 hours basically up in Georgia to get your jump wings. It didn't make sense. We're out of whack, so it needed to be corrected.
It was one of my favorite questions that were asked on the House floor, and responses came from Halsey when the question came up. Aren't you concerned about the health and safety of the the patrons of cosmetologists? And Halsey said something along the lines of, "Well, I think if it's good enough for our EMTs to make sure that they're certified, it's probably good enough for our cosmetologists too."
Yeah, that's a fact.
Well, Nancy, what is your pleasure here? Do you want to hold questions to the end, or you want to take questions up in each section?
Let's go ahead and if there are specific questions, let's go ahead and start putting them in. Let's move on to the next speakers, and I'll monitor the chat room, Tom, if you can't see it. And
Okay.
we'll go from there. But let's move on to the other speakers, and we'll come back and hammer them with questions at the end.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to the next section now, which is liability protection for businesses and employers. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and one that I've been fighting for 4 years since I've been up there. Senator Wright, Senator Brandis has really been at the center of this for a long time. Senator Wright has come in and really carried the torch well. And I'm going to throw this out there to both of you, and maybe you can each take turns answering or both answer the question. But you're talking about some legislation now on what to do with COVID. Can you give us an example or an overview of what that legislation looks like?
Sure, I'm happy to. So obviously, businesses face a variety of threats during this crazy time, and one of those threats is the simple truth that people are going to come into your facility, and at some juncture they could contract this illness, and if that happens, one, because you were willfully and negligent, that's one thing. But if one of your servers at your restaurant leaves a salt shaker on the table and it was just simple negligence, should you be subject to liability and potentially lose your business because of that one simple negligent act, or because you didn't wipe down the door handle 5 times, you only did it 3 times during the day? I think those are some of the questions that we're wrestling with. Beyond that, you can expand that out to nursing homes. Nursing homes are facing a variety of challenges right now. One, they're required to have employees on site, and those employees are likely who's bringing in COVID when a nursing home gets the pandemic inside of their facility. And so, are they taking the appropriate steps? And if they are, and it still gets in, people get sick, or God, unfortunately, somebody passes away, what type of liability does that nursing home face? Same with hospitals, right? People are coming in and out of the emergency room all the time. Somebody's going to bring in COVID. So when the hospital gets exposed to COVID, what type of liability does that place on the hospitals? So in those 3 examples, we believe that there needs to be some clear lines of when liability exists and when it doesn't. If you are taking reasonable steps, if you're following the state guidelines, if those and you're doing everything that you were supposed to do via the state guidelines, then can you be held liable? In my opinion, you should not be held liable for those activities. If you were willfully ignoring the state guidelines, it's a very different thing. If you are purposely exposing people to COVID, if you're having COVID parties in college, right, there is some liability that exists in that space if you're purposely allowing those things to happen on your business. So I think those are two different things we've got to think about. So we've proposed legislation where it's in draft form right now. We don't really have a venue to file it in quite yet. If we were to go into special session, we would of course file that legislation and ask that be added to the call. And we believe that there will be a special session, most likely in early November, to deal with some of the budget challenges the state faces right now. But we believe that we need to take on this liability issue for COVID and take it on head on, because I will argue right now that many of your businesses are open and their general liability policies will not cover them in many cases if a COVID claim is made against them. And so that individual, those businesses are operating bare, but they're operating with this catch-22. They can either stay closed or and not see any revenue, which their businesses are clearly not designed to operate without revenue, or they can open and face potential liability without insurance coverage for that exposure. And so you've placed business owners in this impossible situation. The legislature in this unique circumstance needs to step in and address this issue. There's going to be no perfect solution. There's going to be no perfect way to address this. But we can put together some simple, straightforward ways so that businesses know what standards they need to meet. And if they meet those standards, there's a safe harbor.
Excellent. Senator Wright, you want to jump in there?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Representative Leek. I concur with Senator Brandis 100%. You may remember that about a week and a half before we wrapped up shop with our session for 2020, that we were already discussing a little bit amongst our senators that this was going to have to be addressed. And I'm happy to hear. I didn't know that maybe we're already thinking about a November coming back to tally, but it's certainly time for us to do that and time for us to discuss this, because it is a concern. And I've had plenty of our constituents contact us saying, what are we going to do? And I've actually been telling them that we will be working on something for them in the legislature, because this will just be fodder for some attorneys out there that want to find a new home to raise some money for their pockets, and at the same time destroy businesses that are trying to do the right thing. And so we're going to have to collectively find a way. I think it's going to be a challenge. I think Senator Brandis has already alluded to that. It's going to be a challenge to make sure that we can define an employer or a business that is doing it correctly, and not have someone pick on them because just one day they missed wiping a doorknob off between 1 and 2 or some crazy thing. So it'll be a challenge for us to get it right. But I'm looking forward to supporting what both of you are working on and making sure that we take care of everyone like we should.
And I'll tell you, folks, it's not losing the lawsuit that gets you. It's the fact of the lawsuit that gets you. And most lawsuits
you'll go broke before discovery.
That's right. That's right. And, most lawsuits never make it to trial and get resolved in advance. Yep. Because the liability issues here are going to be so confused and complex, you're not going to be able to pinpoint where the virus came from. And that means that somebody's got a factual issue, which means that they've got a lawsuit and the lawsuit can perpetuate. So I'm on board with what you guys are doing 100%. I'm glad that someone's picking up that mantle and running with it. Senator, do you want to, either one of you want to give us some examples of how you think this would work, this liability protection would work?
Well, under my piece of legislation, basically the state will establish standards for businesses and we would provide some safe harbor. We would provide a safe harbor, and it would simply say if you're complying with state standards, then you have a safe harbor from litigation. It would probably still require you to go to court in order to get the case dismissed and for you to prove that you were complying with the safe harbor. But that's really the goal. It needs to be simple. It needs to be straightforward, and business owners need to know exactly where to go, and in order to know exactly what to comply with, in order to comply with that state, in order to receive that safe harbor benefit.
Excellent. Senator Wright?
Well, again, I agree with Senator Brandis. This is an area that I think he has much greater knowledge than I do in these areas, and so do you, Representative Leek. And I will support what you fellows are talking about because it's very important to us. And I'm here today also probably to learn a little bit in making sure that I do the right things to support what you're working on. And I think Senator Brandis, with his experience and the committees that he chairs, is the right man to lead the Senate forward in this direction.
Thank you, Jeff. Now, I understand Utah is one of the states who have acted on this. Have you studied what they've done?
We have. A number of states have acted on this. In fact, the federal government's talking about acting on this as well. It's one of the key components of the Senate plan for kind of CARES Act 2. But I think what we're looking at is trying to establish a very clear, simple, straightforward way for businesses to comply and provide some safe harbor. The goal here is that it not be a complicated piece of legislation, that it be very easy for businesses to understand that the state has a role, that businesses have a role, and that we have this clear dividing line between willful and wanton disregard of the law and of the regulations and of the standards versus simple somebody simply just not complying with one of them, but the business overwhelmingly trying to comply. So you can imagine the complexities of individual types of businesses and the just almost unlimited variables that could be out there, which would find somebody simply falling out of compliance with one of the ways. But you know, the challenge is you have a trial bar that, you know, you have some attorneys out there who will file suit over all kinds of things just to get individuals to settle, right? I mean, we see these all the time, these types of rash of different lawsuits out there with the goal of not getting to trial, not getting the ultimate outcome. They don't want to chase this thing that far. What they really do is want to get a settlement on the table. And so if they can file 100 COVID lawsuits and they can get a settlement out of 80 of them, then they're, you know, in the money. And that's one challenge. The other challenge you're going to have is if somebody ultimately passes away, God forbid, that kind of raises everything to a whole new level. And I think you'll see them targeting specific businesses, right? Going after a very small mom and pop business doesn't make a lot of sense because they just know there's not deep pockets. But you start going after some of the hotel chains, you start going after some of the big restaurants, you know that those are big targets. And so you're going to see the targeting of specific businesses for COVID-related claims. And it's very hard to tie out, you know, and it's hard to disprove that somebody didn't get COVID if they can say, hey, I was in your facility. They may have visited 6 facilities during that day. And, you know, how do we specifically tie COVID to that specific facility? It's going to be hard to defend your business when you don't know where or how or specifically when they got COVID. But those are some of the challenges that we're going to see businesses facing. And with a rush to get to settlement by the plaintiffs, because you know, the fact patterns are very, very gray. And
Senator Brandis, have you studied at all what you know, what the insurance impacts of these lawsuits will be? I know most liability policies require some degree of physical harm to the structure or to the business before they kick in. But have you studied that at all to take?
Yeah, I mean, I've reviewed a lot of it and I've talked to a number of insurers. I mean, I think there's a lot of question out there whether your insurance will cover you and whether they will stand in your defense if you are in fact sued for COVID liability. Clearly, this question is going on right now with business interruption cases. And whether your business whether COVID is considered a physical damage or physical harm to your business under business interruption insurance. And what we found so far is that most business interruption claims are not being paid because of COVID. I think it's an open question whether the general liability policy of businesses cover COVID and whether they'll stand in the shoes of the business owner for these types of claims. But the worst case scenario is that a business is naked in insurance under these types of situations, because then the business owner is paying out of pocket for both their insurance costs and whatever liability they were found to have. And so that's where I think the most challenging space is in the general liability policies.
Excellent. Senator Wright, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I'd just like to add, and I'm sure Senator Brandis has thought about this already, but basically what we've been talking about are people that are working in the service industry. And yet our country has also a very large number of what was called essential businesses, which some of those are manufacturing businesses. So you're dealing with the same people day after day. You're not having retail customers coming into your restaurant or your retail customers coming into some store. You have the same group of people day in and day out. And sometimes you have an employee that maybe had to get let go because they're not doing their job. And they could also try to use that as, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, I caught COVID at my job. So I think we've got a big job ahead of us, Senator Brandis, and I'm going to help you in any way I can, because this could be worse than the COVID issue on the other side of
it. It could take down whole industries in Florida. I mean, your nursing home industry is, largely an industry that's operated by real estate investment trusts that own the real estate, and an operating business that runs on razor thin margins that actually operates the nursing home. Yep. But what this could do is totally disrupt the entire nursing home industry, totally disrupt the entire hospital industry in the state of Florida if we don't get it right.
Yep, I agree. This would be like a tsunami.
Oh, and your private colleges, your all of your private educational institutions as well. I mean, your private schools that don't have protection via the state with sovereign immunity. I mean, this could just absolutely destroy all of those private institutions.
Yep, I agree.
And what happens when you see these lawsuits become so prevalent is, and the insurance gets caught up in it, is what happens is they spread the cost across all other insurance premiums and Floridians across the state. And so it not only hits the businesses that are being directly attacked with these lawsuits, it hits every person who carries insurance in the state of Florida.
Absolutely. And what you're going to find is the next round of insurance policies that your businesses sign will have a COVID exclusion. I will just guarantee that that's going to happen. You already see this with business interruption. I have to imagine that's going to happen with general liability. That's going to be one of the big challenges, is that so many businesses are going to find themselves without coverage for these types of issues, just because it's impossible for an insurer to price. And you wouldn't be able to pay the premium if they were able to price it. We're already finding this, in the challenges of property insurance, and growing more and more challenging across the state. What's going to happen in general liability insurance if COVID is required to be covered is it's going to be just astronomically expensive for small businesses.
Excellent. Senators, is there anything you'd like to close on with this, or anything that we didn't touch?
No, specifically as it relates to COVID insurance, I think in that area, that's one area of public policy that we need to continue to work on. I think the other big area of public policy that I'm going to continue to address this year is just the overall problems that we're seeing in property insurance as a whole. Insurance around the state is getting more and more expensive. The average rate increase is going to be somewhere between 20 and 30% this year for Florida homeowners. That is, we're on this unsustainable trajectory of rate increases. There's a race going on right now in Florida between rates and lawsuits. And can we raise rates fast enough to keep up with the amount of lawsuits that businesses are getting? Understand that many homeowners insurance policies, right, our homeowner insurance companies today are still receiving lawsuits from Hurricane Irma, which was a September of 2017 storm. That's continuing to be one of the big challenges that's causing rates to continue to go up in Florida. So we are continuing to monitor homeowners rates. If you think about the Achilles heel of the Florida real estate market, which is so important to chambers of commerce in your area and mine, it's the rising insurance prices. And so it's one of the areas I think we've got to address. Florida has been, the legislature, I think, has been, particularly this Florida Senate, has been willfully behind in addressing some of the critical areas of homeowners insurance. And that's one of the things I think we're going to highlight and try to address this year.
So once again, I have to agree with our Senator Brandis. Our fellow Senator Doug Brockson has forewarned us that this was going to happen. And I could tell in his demeanor when he was telling us that we needed to push for some reform, because it is going to get to the point where people aren't going to be able to afford their insurance. And we're making one particular group of society wealthy with all their lawsuits, and we're losing the protection that we think that we should be able to afford. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us this next year, that's for sure. And I'm looking forward to making sure that we do what's right for our fellow citizens.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. Before we move into questions here, I want to take a moment, personal privilege here, and acknowledge my former colleague, Jason Broder, who's running for the Senate. Got a piece of Volusia County, I think, Jason, and I think you've got a piece of our Seminole County, but I wanted to acknowledge, I see him on the line here. Thanks for joining us, Jason. Let's go to some of the questions here. One of the questions we have is do waivers provided by employers to customers help at all if litigation happens? Anybody want to field that?
Yeah, I'm not an attorney. I'm a Christian, so I don't know the answer specifically to that question. It just depends if it's worth the paper it's written on. I don't know that I think my kids are going back to school right now. We're required by one of our schools, because my kids go to different schools, to attest every day that our kid has not come in contact with anyone with COVID. I don't know whether that's valuable or not. I don't know if it depends. It just depends. I think the challenge is the lawsuit itself is what's going to drive the cost, and getting to the whole discovery area is what's so expensive for small businesses. And especially if your insurer is not standing there to defend you, and you're having to cover all of that cost out of pocket, that's really going to be the major problem here, because it could be tens of thousands of dollars against your small businesses just to get to trial.
I got to tell you, I didn't realize that being an attorney and a Christian were mutually exclusive.
Oh, they are.
Come on now. I'll tell you as an attorney that those waivers can be effective. It largely depends on, one, whether the legislature has acted to make them not effective, and two, whether they're written well. So it is a layer of defense. And at this point, with everything being on the table, I'm not sure I wouldn't try it. So I'm going to move on to another question here. Let's see here. Is there any assistance for commercial businesses that lease office space? We do not qualify for employee or wage help, and they're losing tenants. Does anybody on the call know anything about that?
No, I don't think there is. I mean, I think most of the programs are specific to individual businesses. Though they may qualify for PPP through the federal government when that was available, but I don't think there's any specific state of Florida programs. I would work with your local tax collector or a tax property appraiser and make sure that they understand how your business is being affected. There may be some relief at the local level, but I don't know of any state programs. And frankly, it would be hard for us to scale a program and put enough dollars there to be effective. I think the big challenge the state's facing over the next year or the next 2 years is we're facing a $4.5 billion shortfall. So I don't see any additional funds going to that specific program, and don't know of any specific programs that would be available.
Yeah, he's right. There's nothing available from the state, that's for sure. And touching on the budget, it's something that's going to become very important to us very soon as we realize the shortfall. And I'm hoping that as people go to vote, that they look at the people that they're voting for, make sure that they vote for people that have experience, because we're really going to be heading into some uncharted waters in the next couple of years. And we need to have people at the helm that can navigate their cities and counties through all of this.
Excellent. We got another question here. What is your concern about potential class actions out there as it relates to COVID? As Senator Wright or Senator Brandis, have you thought about that?
Again, I have to defer to my friend Senator Brandis. I've been concerned about any of these lawsuits, whether they're class action or otherwise. And again, we did talk about it briefly before session ended, but we had to get out of there too because of COVID. And so now we're going to be looking at perhaps another callback in November, and we're going to have to get serious about this, or it's maybe going to get ahead of us before we catch up to it. So it gets back to just being, take care of yourself. I have a hard time sometimes as an employer, as a citizen, as a business owner, that people can come and actually trip and fall and claim that you tripped them, you made them fall, and what happened to just being responsible for ourselves? But we seem to have lost that way, and we're always looking to find somebody else to blame. So I really am very thrilled to hear what Senator Brandis is doing, and I want to get on that bandwagon with him, because we need to stop this before we fall off the cliff.
Thank you. I think maybe this next question might be, the best person to answer it might be the secretary, although I'm not sure he's willing to answer it. Is there any idea when we might move into the next opening phase of the governor's plan, specifically as it relates to group gatherings, both inside and out?
So I can't speak to a specific date, but I do know that after we've taken all the suggestions after meeting with the bars and the breweries, we are working on coming up with something that works immediately. I can't tell you a specific date because it's a moving target every day, it seems like. Is it going to be tomorrow? No. Is it going to be 3 months from now? No. I mean, I had one guy say, well, just give me the number of days, tell me it's just days away. And I said, well, there's 365 days in a year. So I promise you it's coming in days, but it's going to happen soon. Look, there's a couple things we got to look at too. We know there's going to be another spike with schools coming back in. We have to weigh all these things and find that balance so that we can get everybody back out there as soon as possible. The problem is it's just not going to happen soon enough because some of these businesses are dying every day. So to answer your question, I can't give you the date specifically, but I know it's coming very soon.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think that's about all we can expect at this point in time. Secretary, your voice is a little gravelly there. Did you have a beer at every one of those stops, or?
No, but I did defend myself, and I had to talk a lot. And but it was, like I said, it wasn't an easy conversation. If I'd had a beer at every one of those, my voice would probably be a little bit better.
Well, I think we've gotten through all of the questions, Nancy. I want to thank Senator Wright, Secretary Beshears, and Senator Brandis for being here today. I want to thank again my former colleague Jason Broder, and I want to turn it back over to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your moderating this very important discussion today. And Secretary Beshears, we thank you for your armor that you've taken into these businesses. I think you realize the importance, and we all do, of businesses reopening safely, and that's what we're all here trying to have happen. So thank you for opening yourself up to go and face businesses and talk to them about what's going on each and every day. We really do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. And, I can tell you that the privilege of the mic as well. And, Mr. Broder is in a unique position, as he's also a chamber CEO. So a shout out to one of my colleagues who's also on the call. You didn't notice that he made a comment to Tom that he didn't read. So I'll leave that to Tom to read later on without the group listening in. But we do appreciate what you're all doing. We really thank you for your public service. Those of you who are sitting in elected positions, this is not an easy time to be representing the public. We know that your hearts and your desires there to help everybody get back to business, and we do appreciate that. We thank you for your time today. We thank you for your accessibility. We appreciate, again, knowing that we can pick up the phone and talk to you, and that we have so many great legislators that are working on behalf of business, and we know that you've got our interests in mind, and we're there to help fight the good fight with you where appropriate, and we're also there to help defend some of those decisions that are really tough. So thank you all for all of your time today, and we hope you gained some information out of the program. And as a reminder, it will be recorded for anybody that would like to go back and listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.